Hello, this is Paranormal Girl, and today I'm going to talk about the Sphinx. The Sphinx is a mythical creature with the body of a lion, most often with a human head and sometimes with wings. The creature was an Egyptian invention and had a male head, human or animal. However, in ancient Greek culture, the creature had a head of a woman. The Sphinx is also present in the art and sculpture of the Mycenaean, Assyrian, Persian, and Phoenician civilizations. Sphinxes were first created by the Egyptians and usually wore names or headdresses as worn by the pharaohs. And examples exist of sphinxes with human faces but surrounded by a lion's mane, particularly from Nubia. And in the New Kingdom, the head was sometimes that of a ram, representative of Amun. The exact date when the first Sphinx appeared is not known, and the most famous Sphinx of all is the Great Sphinx of Giza, and it has not been precisely dated. Some scholars date it as far back as the reign of Cheops, circa 2500 BCE. There is a story in the 18th dynasty, Tutmosis IV, when he was a mere prince, went on a hunting expedition and fell asleep in the shadow of the Sphinx. Whilst asleep, he dreamt that the Sphinx spoke to him and promised that he would become king if he cleared the sands that had accumulated around the feet of the statue. In the reign of Shafran, sphinxes became more widespread, and they were usually placed as guards outside temples, tombs, and funerary monuments. Sphinxes were also present in the art of Minoan and Mycenaean cultures from the early 2nd millennium BC. The earliest examples are found on clay relief plaques used to decorate pottery vessels and on beaten gold dress ornaments from the Minoan Crete. Later, three-dimensional sphinxes were similarly added to clay vessels and survive in fresco from Pylos, also depicted the mythical creature. In the 13th century BCE, there are examples of pottery found in Cyprus, but probably manufactured on the Greek mainland, with painted sphinxes in silhouette, often in pairs and positioned heridically. Sphinxes were also popular subject with the Mycenaean ivory carvings, usually in the form of plaques and small lidded boxes. The Sphinx was also commonly represented in both Assyrian and Persian art, usually with the wings and a male human head. Large sculpted sphinxes in the shape of winged bulls often stood in pairs outside palaces and guarded against evil forces. Such an example is a large sphinx presently in the British Museum, which once stood outside the palace of Ashurbanipal II and Nimrod circa 865 BCE. The Persian architecture often incorporated sphinxes in low relief in walls and gates. An example from Susa of the 6th century BCE and Persepolis of the 4th century BCE depict male-headed sphinxes wearing divine horned headdresses. In contrast to the Egyptian view, the ancient Greeks saw the Sphinx as a more troublesome creature, and the most famous myth involving a Sphinx is that of the Theban prince Oedipus. The territory of Thebes in Greece was terrorized by a Sphinx, and Hesiod tells us in the Theogony that the creature was born from the Chimera, a fire-breathing monster with 3 heads, part of a lion, goat, snake, and a dragon, and was sister to Nemean, lion, and half-sister of Cerberus, the 3-headed dog that guarded Hades. The Sphinx created drought and famine, and would only leave the Thebans alone if they solved her riddle. This was to divine the creature that has 2, 3, or 4 feet, and although it's able to change its form, it moves slower and the more feet it uses. Anyone who did answer the riddle and failed to do so correctly was killed and devoured by the Sphinx. When the Sphinx killed his son Haemon, Creon, the king of Thebes, became so desperate at the situation that he offered the kingdom and his daughter Locasta to anyone who could answer the riddle. Oedipus took up the challenge and gave the correct answer, man, and in frustration and anger, the Sphinx leapt to her death from the Acropolis of Thebes. Scenes of the hero with the Sphinx are more common depictions in art of the Oedipus myth and appeared from the 6th century BC on pottery, on carved gems, and a decorative device on fabrics. In the ancient Greek culture, the first sphinxes to appear in sculpture appears from the 7th century BCE, and these were made of clay and are particularly associated with Crete, where the moulded heads of sphinxes were sometimes added to pithoi. From the 6th century BCE, sphinxes appeared in stone sculptures, sometimes with raised hind quarters. These sculptures were used as votive offerings, usually perched atop Ionic and Doric columns, and placed at sanctuary sites such as Delphi and Olympia. Indeed, one of the most famous sphinxes was discovered at Delphi, originally sat on a 10-meter high Ionic column. It had been depicted as the oracle of the Naxians around 560 BCE. In gratitude for the dedication of the priest Apollo, gave citizens of Naxos the privilege of priority when consulting the oracle. Sphinxes also commonly appeared atop funerary stelae and were usually brightly painted. A surviving example from Attica around 540 BCE displays traces of paint that would have been originally have had black hair, wing feathers in green, blue, black and red, and breast scales in red and blue. Interestingly, when used in votive offerings, the head always faced forward, while sphinxes on funerary stelae always faced sideways. A third use of sphinxes, possibly borrowed from Syria or Cyprus, was a decorative support bases for carved stone water basins, which are used in sanctuaries. Other famous depictions in art of sphinxes include the 3 which top the crested helmet of the Athena of Parthenos statue in Phidias, which stood in the Parthenon, and the sphinxes which adorned the feet of the throne of Zeus at Olympia.